The massive grizzly bear was dying, and wildlife veterinarian Dr. Michael Robinson knew he had only minutes to save both her life and her unborn cubs. Standing in the Alaskan wilderness at 3 a.m. with nothing but a headlamp cutting through the darkness, Michael made a decision that would haunt and inspire him for the rest of his life. It had started as a routine emergency call. A local pilot had spotted the bear from his aircraft earlier that evening, clearly in distress near a remote creek bed 40 miles from the nearest road. The 800-pound female was lying motionless, her massive frame heaving with labored breathing. What the pilot couldn't see from the air was the cruel wire snare wrapped tightly around her back leg, cutting deep into her flesh and preventing her from moving to find a safe place to give birth. Michael had been working wildlife rescues in Alaska for 15 years, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. As he approached the bear with his emergency veterinary kit, he could see she was in the final stages of labor. Her eyes, usually fierce and commanding, were glazed with pain and exhaustion. The infection from the snare had spread through her system, and without immediate intervention, both mother and cubs would die within the hour. Working alone in bear country at night violated every safety protocol Michael had ever learned. His radio had lost signal 20 miles back, his satellite phone battery was nearly dead, and the nearest backup was hours away. But as he looked into those dying eyes, protocol became meaningless. This magnificent creature needed help, and he was the only one who could provide it. The first challenge was sedating a bear in active labor without harming the unborn cubs. Michael calculated the dosage 3 times, his hands shaking not from cold, but from the weight of responsibility. Too much sedative would kill the cubs. Too little would leave him working on a conscious 800-pound predator. He administered the dose and waited, watching her breathing slow to a manageable rhythm while praying she would remain stable. Working by headlamp, Michael carefully cut away the wire snare that had been slowly killing her. The metal had cut so deep it had nearly reached the bone. Blood flowed freely as he cleaned the wound, and he could smell the putrid odor of infection. But there was no time to properly treat the leg wound. The cubs were coming, whether they were ready or not. What happened next would be burned into Michael's memory forever. As he examined the bear, he realized the first cub was breached and stuck in the birth canal. Without immediate intervention, all 3 lives would be lost. With no surgical suite, no proper equipment, and no backup, Michael made the decision to attempt an emergency delivery in the middle of the Alaskan wilderness. Using equipment from his emergency kit, Michael worked to reposition the cub. His heart pounded as he felt the tiny form move under his guidance. After 20 minutes of careful manipulation, the first cub emerged, small and still. Michael cleared its airway and rubbed its tiny body vigorously. For terrifying seconds, nothing happened. Then a small gasp, and the cub began to breathe. The second cub came easier, already positioned correctly and seemingly stronger than its sibling. As Michael cleaned both newborns and placed them near their mother's warmth, he monitored the massive grizzly's vital signs. The sedative was beginning to wear off, and she would soon regain consciousness. He had minutes to complete his work and get to safety. But the mother bear wasn't finished. As consciousness returned, something remarkable happened that would change everything Michael thought he knew about wildlife behavior. Instead of showing aggression toward the human who had just invaded her most vulnerable moment, she seemed to recognize that he had helped her. Her eyes, now clear and alert, fixed on Michael with what he could only describe as understanding. Michael slowly backed away, giving the new mother space to bond with her cubs. He watched from a safe distance as she gently nuzzled her babies, encouraging them to nurse. The scene was both beautiful and heartbreaking, knowing that her infected leg wound still threatened all their lives. But something told him this story wasn't over. The mother bear struggled to her feet, clearly in pain from her injured leg. Michael expected her to retreat deeper into the wilderness with her cubs. Instead, she did something that defied everything he knew about grizzly bear behavior. She approached him. Every instinct screamed at Michael to run, but something in her demeanor told him to stay still. The massive bear stopped just feet away and, incredibly, lay down again. She looked directly at him, then at her injured leg, then back at him. The message was unmistakable. She wanted help. Working with a conscious grizzly bear went against everything Michael had ever been taught, but this was no ordinary situation. With careful, deliberate movements, he retrieved antiseptic and bandaging from his kit. The bear remained perfectly still as he cleaned and dressed her wound, occasionally looking back to check on her cubs, but never showing aggression toward her unlikely veterinarian. As dawn broke over the Alaskan wilderness, Michael finally finished treating the bear's leg. The mother bear stood, tested her weight on the bandaged limb, and looked at Michael one more time. Then she did something that brought tears to his eyes. She walked to where her cubs lay nursing and carefully picked up the smaller one in her mouth. She carried the cub to Michael and gently placed it at his feet. The tiny cub was clearly weaker than its sibling, and the mother somehow understood that it needed additional help. Michael examined the small bear and realized it had a heart murmur that would require ongoing monitoring. The mother bear was asking him to save her baby's life. Over the next hour, as the sun climbed higher, Michael provided supportive care for the weak cub while the mother tended to its stronger sibling. When the cub's condition stabilized, she reclaimed her baby and prepared to leave. But before disappearing into the forest, she turned back one final time and made a sound Michael had never heard from a grizzly before. A low, gentle vocalization that seemed unmistakably like gratitude. 3 months later, Michael received a call that would complete this incredible story. A family of grizzly bears had been spotted near a popular hiking trail, and park rangers were concerned about potential conflicts with humans. When Michael arrived to assess the situation, he immediately recognized the distinctive scar pattern on the mother bear's leg. It was her. What amazed everyone was the bear's behavior around humans. Unlike typical grizzlies, she showed no aggression toward people on the trail. Instead, she seemed to be teaching her cubs that humans weren't always threats. She had learned to distinguish between those who meant harm and those who meant help, and she was passing that wisdom to her offspring. The weaker cub had grown strong and healthy, thriving under its mother's care. Both cubs showed remarkable comfort around humans, following her mother's example of cautious but peaceful coexistence. Park officials documented this unique family group, noting their unusual behavior as evidence of the complex intelligence and emotional capacity of grizzly bears. Michael's story spread throughout the wildlife conservation community, challenging long-held beliefs about human-bear interactions. The bear he had risked everything to help had not only survived, but had become a bridge between two species that typically viewed each other as threats. She had chosen trust over fear, cooperation over conflict. But the most remarkable part of this story was yet to come. 2 years later, Michael was conducting a routine wildlife survey in the same area when he encountered a lone hiker who had become lost and injured after falling from a steep trail. As Michael provided first aid, he heard a familiar sound, the low, gentle vocalization he remembered from that night in the wilderness. The mother grizzly emerged from the tree line with her now grown cubs. Instead of seeing the injured human as vulnerable prey, she had led her cubs away from potential conflict and positioned herself between them and the humans, not as a threat, but as a protector. She had remembered the lesson of that night. Sometimes helping each other is the path to survival. The bear family watched from a respectful distance as Michael helped the injured hiker to safety. As they prepared to leave, the mother bear made that same soft sound once more before disappearing into the forest with her cubs. Justice had been served in the most beautiful way possible, through understanding, compassion, and the recognition that all living creatures share this world together. Michael returned to his work with a transformed perspective on wildlife conservation. The bear who he had trusted with her life and her cubs' lives had taught him that the relationship between humans and wildlife doesn't have to be defined by fear and conflict. Sometimes, when we choose to help instead of harm, we create connections that transcend species boundaries and change the world in ways we never imagined possible. If this story moved you and reminded you of the incredible bonds possible between humans and wildlife, please hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing animal rescue stories.